So if you've been following me in this channel for a while, you might recognize or remember this video. And today I was looking and I saw this comment right here. And it asked for an update on this. So basically what that video was about was I told a story about how I prayed and fasted for 7 days. A pretty intense fast. And waited on God to show himself, reveal himself to me, and nothing happened. And so I saw that comment and wanted to give an update. So here we go. And it's, gosh, 5 years later from when that happened. I think I did that little fast thing 2017 or 2016. It's been a ride. It's been an absolute ride. So the short answer is, well, I still don't consider myself a Christian. I have left the church. Lots changed, but in regards to that video, the update to that video is that nothing's really changed, but also everything has. I mean, it's been years. It's been years and years since I made that video. So basically, what I feel the need to talk about right now is my idea of God. I made a video on this probably a month or two ago. I don't know, but my idea of God and who God is. So to me, in what religion, like I've done so much deconstructing and reconstructing from when I first filmed that video. And part of that deconstruction and reconstruction was who God is. Now, a big part of my idea of who God is, was, whatever, a big, massive part of that was my parents. I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in the church. Church was my entire life. And something that happens when you're a pastor's kid, or just have parents that are super involved in the church, but I think this kind of specifically plays towards pastors' kids, because here's the thing. Everybody that I ever knew would go to my parents for help when they were in search of answers, when they were in need of what God would say about a certain situation. They would go to my parents, which, my parents were the pastors. They, that it is what it is. It was what it was. People still do that. So seeing that as a kid, and this came up in therapy so much years later when I went through, I did CBT therapy for about a year. And something that consistently came up in therapy was a lot of things traced back to my idea of God, and that as a pastor's kid, because of who my parents were, what I saw growing up, everybody going to them for all the answers, it's difficult. It's changed because I had something pretty amazing happen that I'm going to make another video about in the future. But something that, a belief that I had, was I was not able to separate any idea of who God was from my parents. My parents were God. And I still have a hard time separating that, the idea of that. And that affects a lot of areas of my life, more than you would expect. I mean, it consistently came up in therapy. All these things were leading back to my parents, and then it was like, why do I hold my parents to such a high standard? And it's like, I have this belief that they are God. And so, every time that they would correct me, or they felt disappointed in me, or it's not even correction, I would say disappointment. Every time I knew that something I did hurt them, I would feel it as though God were looking down on me. God himself. was looking down on me. And so it's really tough, years and years later, going through this and, still sometimes seeing and I recognize that I think it now, and so I'm able to kind of shift and change my thoughts into like, okay, they're not God. My parents are not God. They're pastors. They're successful pastors, but my parents aren't God. And so I had to change that perception about God in order for me to, if God does exist, find the real deal, right? Because I was never going to see or experience a God that I was essentially blind to. And that belief was blinding me to something that could be real. So it's taken a lot for me to get past that point, and I'm still getting past it. It's a process, and that healing process doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's going to be something that, as long as my parents are around and alive, I think that I'll probably be, healing from that. But there's been major strides, so I will make a video about that in the future. So I had to get rid of that belief about my idea of God and separate those things. And so I think it was after that, after realizing that, is when I really started to look at God as who, like, where, how, who, what, where, how, like, I think God, and this is what I made the video about in the past. God, if He is unconditional, right, and unconditional love, we place so many conditions. Our idea of God, we place so many conditions on God, who is unconditional, in omnipresent, all the omnis. I mean, an unconditional God, right? We place so many conditions on God. And I started to really think to myself, what does an unconditional God look like? Well, and then I got into the whole like anthropomorphic, we anthropomorphize God. We make Him into a human being. But God is not male or female or made into a human being. Sure, the whole story of Jesus coming down, God making Himself into a human, and that human happenstance to be a man. But I don't think God, if He exists and if He is unconditional, has that condition of sex or gender or whatever you want to call it. And then I start to think about other boxes that I've placed on my idea of God and how that might be blinding me to actually experience God. So all sorts of things. Those were conditions of love, conditions of freedom, conditions of, I think I put God, my idea of God, in such a box, and I called that box non-denominational religion, spirit-filled religion, when that is still a box. So I was like, what do I even call God? Because every time I say God, I think of a white man in the sky. I do. I do. I wholeheartedly admit that. Every time I say God, I think of a white man in the sky. And I think God, for Him to be unconditional, would be a father, a mother, a son, a daughter, be able to play all of these human roles, to teach how to love better, love ourselves and love others better. So, all of these conditions being on God, I was like, what does a God look like without conditions? And me just only thinking about that idea of God when I say God, a white man, it became a lot easier for me to be able to open myself to the possibilities of the reality of a God. Once I shifted from saying God, lots of people are going to get mad at me for this, whatever. Once I shifted from saying God to saying universe. Because universe to me is something that is literally expanding. It has conditions, but it's such a general a much broader way of looking at things. And I've even had somebody propose the thought to me of, well, if you say universe, why not say multiverse, which is even bigger, which that's, something to think about for sure. So I say universe now, and I don't really place as much as I can, besides the title being a condition. I don't try to place any conditions on that. I think that from just, I'm 27 years old. I'm still super young. And I think just from the little bit of life that I've lived, that I have seen that life has a way of going about things. There's some sort of something, some sort of system. I do think that there is energy in some sort of way. And I've asked the question, what's the difference between energy, magic, and spirit? Some people say there isn't. Some people have said the source of it. And I don't know, and I don't claim to know. I just know what I have experienced, and I've experienced energy in different sorts of ways, and especially physical energy, emotional energy held in the body, and the power that has. I mean, I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it. I'm a licensed massage therapist. That's my full-time job, and I've seen it in clients where they hold emotions in the body energetically, and I mean, I can feel it, but energetically it's affecting them. And so I realize a lot of the language that I use now can be seen as new age. I don't even look at it like that. I don't get into crystals and all that other new age stuff. I don't even know. I don't look into it. Like I said, I just know what I know and what I feel like I experience. And so like I'm saying, I feel like I've experienced things I can't comprehend. I think that our brains and how they work are ancient and have secrets that will unlock themselves. I've experienced that, when I've been working through a lot of trauma, childhood trauma and emotional healing. Memories will literally unlock themselves. They didn't feel safe enough to be there, to be present. I was in survival mode, and so as I start healing, these memories unlock themselves, and one could say the energy unlocks itself, because our thoughts hold energy. Our thoughts can literally change our physiology. So energy can't be seen, but I know it's there. I feel it. So what's the difference between energy, magic, spirit? I don't know. I don't know if there is a difference. So, all of these things have changed. All of these mindsets have changed. But to wrap it all up, to end it all, or to end this video, I guess, would be for me to say, I, as much as possible, have tried to abandon labels, abandon conditions, abandon these things that can blind me from truth. And I think religion was one of those blinds. I think my ideas can be some blind. I don't see clearly. I know that. And I still don't see clearly. And I still have blinds on. I fully recognize that. And so I try to really open myself up to the truth to be able to present itself. Because I think that the truth can't present itself if we are blinded by our own beliefs and conditions. And so we have to deconstruct them. We have to deconstruct them and allow reality to rebuild itself around us. And I think that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing over the past few years. I'm just like, you know what? There's all the philosophical arguments that I've studied for the existence of God, for ethics, for metaphysics, all of that. There's two sides to the story. And I don't think either of those sides are wrong. But what is the truth of the matter? I think there's benefit in learning all of these things, but I also think that you have to abandon all of these things in order to let the truth present itself. And I think that's where I'm at. I am, honestly, I even released a song about it called Who I Am. I abandoned my identity, and when I did that and I admitted to myself, I don't know who I am, then I started to find myself more than I ever have. I'm a process. I'm becoming. I am a piece of every person I've ever met, and I am so many things. But I had to abandon all things of what I thought I was in order to see who I really am. And I think the same can be said for if a God exists. I think that I love this metaphor. It was on a podcast I did with a friend of mine, Matt. That video is on the channel. But he said something along the lines of, in order, like when you go to the cross to die for God, you also have to take all of the ideas that you ever had about Him, all of the conditions you ever had about God. I say Him. All of the conditions you ever had about God to the cross as well. They all have to die. And I think that's where I'm at. I recognize life as a process. It's not a destination. And when I practiced detaching myself from any form of identity, that's when I truly started to find myself. And so, I've been doing the same thing for God for years. I'm open to letting all of this truth in, but it'll happen when it happens. And I'm avidly searching, by the way. I'm still in my own way. I still I don't even know if I could call it prayer. I talk to myself a lot, and I realize that there is a higher self. And so I just get in touch with that. And maybe that's a voice of God speaking within me. I don't know. But I do know that I am open to a God presenting itself to me. And I think to see that, I just have to get rid of all these blinders. So, that is what I have to say. That is my thoughts on this topic and this subject. So, would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Whatever you got to say, would love to hear it. Would love to talk with you about it. And I think that's it. So like, subscribe, share, and see you misfits in the next one. Peace!